Now that we have our handler within our Flask application properly validating the times that are submitted via the time form, let's do something that is very common when doing form validation, which is to, upon successful processing of the data, if we validate and find that there are no errors, to actually redirect the user to another portion of our application. So this is something that you see a lot. If you don't realize it, when you log into an application, rather than just seeing some sort of like success message on the login form, you're actually sent to, say, your newsfeed or your homepage or your profile within that application. So we want to add something similar within this, even though it's not totally essential to the operation of this particular form, just so you can have it in your toolkit. All right, so here, rather than just returning the message success in a string, I want to redirect to a different page of my application that I have not created yet that will contain some kind of context-specific message. So let's go ahead and create that handler or that page first. So let's say app.route, and I want this to be at, say, valid time. So the URL I was using before, the path I was using was validate time. This will be something that we use to respond when we know we have a valid time. Okay, and so what I want to do here is maybe just return a little bit of HTML. Okay, so I have this page. It's just going to be static. It just contains the same message every time you visit it. And what I want to do is up above here, when I actually successfully validate the form data, I want to redirect to that page. And the way I can do that within Flask is to say redirect and give it the path that I created down below. Okay, and let's go ahead and go to our application and try to start it up and see what happens. All right, so mine's already started here. I'm going to go back to the form. Okay, and let's try to enter something that is valid. Okay, so this is something you might see a lot. If you have debug turned on in your Flask application, which you should, you'll see these nice stack traces reported in your browser. And basically what this is telling me is that I've used the redirect function, but it's not defined. And that just means I need to import it because it is indeed part of Flask. So let's go ahead and go up to the top and import redirect. The redirect method is part of the Flask module. Okay, so now that I do this, let's go ahead and go back and try this again. And there we go. So we have this message, and notice that our URL changed. So a couple of things to note. One is that we're at a different URL. When we submitted this form previously, we were just we would be at the same URL that we submitted it at, right? So how did that happen? Well, if you go to your terminal or your console, you will see exactly how. So if we look at this line right here, this is the log line for the request that I made when I submitted the form. So notice that it's a post request to validate time. That's me typing in the form data and hitting submit. Now notice the return status code for this. So the server returned an HTTP status code of 302. That's a redirect status code. So that basically tells the browser, hey, you need to go somewhere else, right? And so the way that we redirect, the way that this whole redirect machinery works is the server returns a response with 302 status code, and it also tells the browser where it needs to go. So as part of one of the response headers, it will have a location header that basically says, aside from just hey, you need to redirect, it'll tell the browser specifically where to redirect to. That browser, it sees the 302 response code, and then it looks for that location header, and then in this particular case, that location header said valid time, and so the browser went and fetched that resource after it received the 302. So that's what happens when you do a redirect. So in particular, if I wanted to say put a specific message within this form or within this response and say, give the actual time that was validated, I would have to pass it. Generally, the best way to pass that kind of information is going to be via a query parameter. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that as well. All right, so when I'm here, I know I'm going to have valid hour and minutes values. So let me go ahead and just build a time string. I'm going to say stir hours plus the colon separator plus stir minutes. And I have to convert these back to strings because they were converted to integers up above as part of the validation process. And then I basically want to put that time in the query parameters here. So time equals time, and I'm going to say dot format. Let me actually use the index-based formatting string here, and it's dot format with time. So this will again substitute this value, the first or index 0 parameter to dot format, into the placeholder that has the 0 index there. So this will result in a query string being generated for the redirect location. Okay, now when I come down to this URL below that's actually going to be at the redirect location, I need to then handle that query string. So let's say time equals, and recall that we get query parameters out of a request using request.args.get. And since I called my query parameter time, that's right here. This is the name of that query parameter. Since I've called it time, I can get it that way. Okay, and that'll come in, and that'll be a string, which is fine. We're not going to do anything with it numerically. We just want to make it part of our message. And say, I don't know, you submitted and then we'll say dot format with the time here. Okay, so not the most groundbreaking or useful message, but it's the mechanics of this that we're learning and really figuring out. So this request will come in with the query parameter, and it'll be inserted into the message. So let's go ahead and go back and try this again. Okay. All right, so so we're still at the same URL /valid time, although now it has a query parameter right there, and we see that that value was indeed properly inserted into the page. So that's how to set up redirects within an application and how to pass data to a page that you're redirecting to using query parameters.